Okay, so we're live. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Wednesday.
Mercury
Okay, so
retrograde.
we're live. Hello,
Oops.
hello, hello. Welcome. So I keep forgetting. I use the computer so that I can see people's chats, so that we can respond, because I think these conversations are really best when the entire audience is really talking and
100%.
asking questions. So let me invite y'all in. And so if you don't know me, my name is Chitra and I'm a doctor of Ayurveda. And I write Alchemy and Ayurveda with Chitra. And if you don't know what Ayurveda is, it's the science of life. It comes out of the East. Some will say it's the subcontinent of India, but it's really more of an indigenous science, and I adapt it to contemporary times. And as a practice, with I specialize in women's health. And today we are going to be talking about, well, allergy season is about to come. Um, and for some, it's here already. And it never left. But now it's especially challenging because our whole being wants to go outside and enjoy spring. So allergies don't only make you feel miserable, but they also affect your sense of smell, create brain fog, and it's almost as if you're afraid to take a breath. So I'm so excited to be joined by Tammy Davis of Aromagenomics. Did I say that right?
You did, yes.
No, I wanted to say genomics, but that's a whole other thing. To talk about the science of scent and what can be done to care for the sense of smell. So Tammy is the founder the founder of Aromagenomics, and she's a neuroaromatherapist. Lots of syllables in these things. I have to slow down. She's recognized for breaking the code on stress, and after 40 years in pharmacology, the olfactory system, neuroscience, and the chemistry of essential oils, she's internationally recognized for her view on learning into the sense of smell, for empowering the brain's ability to regulate stress response. And she's currently teaches this approach to both professionals and patients. And the more the brain and the body are able to regulate, the easier it is to feel well. Her mission is to teach people why general aromatics are essential. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Margaret. Thank you for being here. Uh, and hi, AJ. Feel free to ask any questions. Tammy, would you like to say anything more about who you are, other than you live in this great state of New Mexico?
Anything more I think would be that part of what's evolved from this is I've been accepted or invited to be a peer reviewer in pharmacology journals that reviews the use of various oils in regards to different health conditions. And I've been invited now to speak at various addiction medicine conferences on the use of, or I should say, the integration of oils when it comes to treatment and recovery.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And then I was also recently just joined the board of the World Taste and Smell Organization. And which is really cool because it really is about our sense of smell and how and what I like to talk about is also is even though we may not be able to smell things, the body is still smelling and not in a stinky way. But it's still detecting the environment, even though we think we cannot smell something.
Exactly. That's what fascinated me about your most recent work. By the way, I'm going to look for your Substack and put it into the chat.
Okay.
But you've been writing about this, the whole body doing this sense of smell beyond that. And that kind of fits into an Ayurvedic perspective as well. So it's really fascinating for me to see what I believe science catching up to these ancient
Finally, right?
ancient ways of being and ancient ways of knowing the body. And I think that one of the main reasons that it's finally catching up is because of the various perspectives. Science tends to be um, looking at minute. It's reductionist. That's the word I'm looking for. Versus Ayurveda and some of these ancient sciences, they're looking at it from a different perspective. I don't even want to say holistic because it's looking from spirit to physical rather than from physical to spiritual. So I'd
Exactly.
love to get more into that. And just, just a little bit to understand our sense of smell. I'm thinking about my dog. Well, I used to have a dog, and his sense of smell is extremely, extremely acute, right? I mean, this is how he communicates. My cats don't quite have that same sense of smell as the dog has, but
Wow.
still they they communicate through the sense of smell. They have glands that emit different aromas, and that's how they mark you as theirs. They own you that way. Uh,
Yeah.
and humans, what happened with humans, I think, is that we developed our sense of sight, and we had to have because we are weaker, out in the wild than most mammals are. I think we developed our sense of sight through fire, and we developed hearing. So not everything could be. There wasn't enough energy to make all of these things super potent. So some things came down, and the sense of smell was not necessary to communicate like our language was. We created language too, but what it does is it tells us about health, our own personal health as well as others. And then it also tells us about ripeness of foods and things like that. So it's more of a personal thing rather than a survival thing. What do you think?
Um, well, at one point it was for survival because we were having to detect food and whether or not, or for that matter, not just food, but also if there was a threat in the area.
Mm.
But I agree with you. Our sense of sight and hearing, which was our first sense, really became more acute because we were externally motivated. And but the sense of smell is more of an internal. It's a more of an internal communication. And and where I feel like we've lost touch with our sense of smell is because we are so externally focused that we don't realize what's actually happening on the inside that our sense of smell is actually providing us. So we can so I do think like I do agree with you, it is more of an internal experience, and it's where our body wisdom comes in because we're detecting our environment at all times, even though we may not be able to see or hear something. For instance, we all species emit oxidative stress. They all emit chemicals that are communicating with other beings. Like, for instance, that's how plants communicate. That's really what inspired me to continue doing with this, and that's really been the catalyst for the work that I do with the human body, because if plants are doing this and animals are doing this, that means we as animals are also doing the same thing. And how are we detecting that external environment? And when we look at it from regaining capturing our senses again, like realizing that we can tap into what we see, tap into what we hear, but also recognize what's going on inside, because something we see may not be what the body's picking up on. If somebody else is, let's just say, for instance, smiling, but they're stressed to all, they're not in the right place and they're putting off this, we can begin to pick up on that. And realizing that that sense of smell becomes that internal communication that helps us make sense of what's going on in the world around us.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And here's our contemporary world, how it does no longer serves us, because our contemporary world, we mask all sorts of scents,
Oh, yeah.
constant, whether it is chemical masking with the PCBs or it's masking with a perfume or even an essential oil. It's masking whatever is happening. And so then we don't get a sense of where we are
Right.
uh, in terms of that. And so it's really important.
It is. And what you just said is important because you mentioned that, with the contemporary mindset, it is reductionist. That's what science does. It reduces it. So if we're using, let's just say, for instance, essential oil to alleviate a symptom, you're masking what's actually happening in the system. Whereas if you can tune into what's going on with the system and begin to use them in a way that allows that brain to self-regulate, now you can become clearer about how you can navigate a situation or potentially or leave a situation or enter a situation. You have a better facility over what your body's actually sending you.
Yes, exactly. And this is how um my work in Ayurveda and it is all about. It's about using the body's intelligence. Yes, we use the herbs, the foods, the lifestyles and essential oils, but it's really about it reminding the body what needs to be done. And the sense of smell and the aromas that are emitted are always going to be telling us something about the system, always. And the idea of developing your sense of smell so that it is more acute than what it is going to lead you into a path of understanding what it is that you need next or what is coming up for you.
Right.
You know, so let's say there's diabetes happening or you're pre-diabetic. You will be able to smell your urine. It's going to have a stronger smell to it. Not only are you going to urinate more, but there's this other smell to it. And so you will know, oh, okay, this is really what's actually happening for me in my body rather than going to get a test. Not that you shouldn't get the test, but you know what to do in advance if you know what those signals and those senses are. And
Exactly.
this is what the senses are for. It's to tell us about how we live in this world.
I completely agree. And if I may add that if for some reason someone has a difficult time smelling, there are ways that you can actually restore that.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes.
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Actually, during COVID, there were a lot of people who lost their sense of taste and smell. And, I gave them a very okay, this is going into the work that I'm gonna be doing at the later on in this month on the 17th, a workshop that I'm doing, for paid members on how to actually care for the nose, but what I did for them, if they were not really into Ayurveda. I mean, I would have people from the local hospital coming in, and this is early days when they knew nothing about it and loss of sense of smell. And I basically told them, just put a little ghee onto the tip of your finger
Really?
and swab the nostril with the ghee. And what happened was is that the sense of smell slowly restored. Why? Because when this this is like the very beginning, but there's inflammation that's happening quite often, and what ghee does is it reduces inflammation. And then from an Ayurvedic perspective, we can go even further. Um, and use medicated oils and different things to help with the nose itself, with the organ itself. But there's so many other portions that go along with it, um, into the sense of smell. Yeah.
Well, I want, yeah. Hmm.
What ways would you work with to do this?
Believe it or not, I would actually work on the digestive system. I would use oils for digestion because so part of our olfactory system includes what we know to what we've they're called ectopic olfactory receptors, which are not the same olfactory receptors that we have in the nose. They are in our skin, they're in most of our organs, and including our digestive system. And you could use, there's a couple of different digestive oils, I should say, that are I won't say they just support digestion because they support also the gut brain relationship, but they also help signal the receptors in the digestive system, the olfactory receptors in the digestive system, to help regulate of all things, the sodium channel, which is how the sense of smell operates through the nose. Is with the sodium channel is one of the ways to do it. And
If you see my eyes going in other directions, I'm thinking.
yeah,
Because my work is really to connect our current thinking to this other thinking. And I absolutely totally agree with you that the gut health is the first place to go, right? And and yet you have to also manage the thing
oh,
that's
absolutely,
affected, you know? So you
absolutely,
do both, and
yeah.
yeah, it's
But I
wonderful.
like,
I like that
but
idea.
But yeah, because it's a neurological breakdown, if you will, when you can't smell something. And so the sodium channels are in the brain. And so it actually makes that helps the microbiome to communicate more efficiently. And again, the ectopic olfactory receptors, what they do is they're designed to detect our environment. I say they're designed, that's what they do. And that's why we have that gut feeling. And that's why we get the chills on our skin because it's picking things up. And in an ideal situation, when the body can actually self-regulate, it means it can actually self-soothe, something that we've lost or maybe never had the ability to develop from a very early age. And so it creates that connection to the environment and helps the body to begin to self-soothe, which now helps the neurological system to regulate the way that it's using minerals. So that's why I go for the gut. I mean, you can certainly put them on. I mean, if I'm going to tell people to put them on, I'll tell them to put them right here under the nose because you're going to get a nice, even if you can't smell it, you'll still benefit from putting it under the nose. But my direct effect also, like I said, is the digestive system because the more we can calm that nervous system and help it to self-regulate, the easier it becomes for us to begin to use those really important trace minerals and electrolytes that we're consuming.
Hmm, interesting. I'm going to have to sit with that for a little while before I can connect the two to Ayurveda, because again, it's reductionist, um, and reductionism isn't a bad thing. Most of us have been taught that way, uh,
Hmm.
you know. But as I said earlier, Ayurveda and the Vedic system comes from the spirit down.
Right.
right? And so for us, and this is where the sodium channel comes in. So when we're looking at the sense of smell, we're looking at the great element Mahabhuta of earth, which is a great subtle element. And in order for the sense of smell to function, we need an earth element, i.e. sodium channel, because sodium is it's a mineral, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's a mineral, which is earth element. So really fascinating connection between that. And so we're looking at a space of, we cannot have the sense of smell, or we cannot have smell without this great earth element. And it's not just, the ground that we walk
Right.
on,
Right.
trees. It's much, much bigger. It's the thing that is physical. So the spirit won't necessarily have the sense of smell. The mind won't necessarily have the sense of smell, but somehow we alchemically get that information and we change it into something else, which is amazing.
Right. And so what I want to say along the lines of what you're talking about when it comes to Ayurveda and bringing in the spirit, that's why I write what I write, is because what I'm doing is bridging really consciousness, spirit with the physical, and helping people become grounded and feel safe in their bodies. Because the more we can feel safe here, the more we can connect. And it really is about connecting to the consciousness that's within us and around us and bringing that all together. That's really what this is all about. I mean, oils in reality are oxidative stress that the plants are producing as a result of their relationship with spirit. And through that relationship with spirit, we can actually begin to capitalize, if you will, on the plant spirits as far as helping us to ground in our body and become safe in our skin, because right now, for most of us, don't feel safe in our skin. But we're here to survive in order to thrive. We're not here to survive or thrive. We have to know how to survive. And so to being able to embody that full ability, like I said, I speak at recovery conferences, treatment and recovery, but the word recover means to regain consciousness. It means, and so what the oils do is they actually bridge both hemispheres of the brain, and which now connects you to your higher self. And then you can capitalize on that energy again and help bring it into the system. Like you said, it cannot smell itself. There's no sense of smell in spirit, but yet there is, we can use our sense of smell to communicate with spirit and to connect with spirit.
So I have a question for you. In
Mm-hmm.
Ayurveda, we have this concept of overuse of any of the senses,
Mm-hmm.
and that in and of itself brings stress.
Yes.
And there was this other word that, before I even go there, I'm hoping that you discover another word for oxidative stress,
Oh, yeah.
because it feels like, to me, when I hear the word stress, it in and of itself is stressful. So if I know that a flower is I know that the when a flower finally gives its fruit of aroma, yes, it's on the path of leaving this world, that particular part of that plant. But I would love another word.
Expression. It's an expression.
Yes, exactly. It's an expression, just like our speech is an expression.
Right.
Anyhow,
It's how the play. Yeah, I mean, we express the very same story. We express both chemicals of, when in a hormonal concept, we produce both inflammatory and anti-inflammatory. That's what we produce, and those are all expressions of our physical body. And the same thing can be said for the plant. So an essential oil basically is just that. It's an expression of the plant. It's an expression of the plant's experience.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And for us to stop and smell that is our communication with
correct.
those plants, and their communication to us, even though we may or may not fully understand what they're trying to express, but what we do know is how it makes us feel. And so that in and of itself is communicative. So I'm wondering about the concept that I just brought up before, this
Hmm.
stress thing that was bugging me so much.
I'm glad you did.
Only because, life is really, really stressful right now, and we're all feeling it, whether you're reading the news or not. Um, so this concept of overuse of the senses.
Hmm.
Um, can you speak a little bit about the neurological aspects of that? Why the body will turn off a sense or
Hmm.
tune it down a little bit, um, the- when there's too much of it, or it's gotten comfortable with it, or for whatever reason.
Um, there's a couple of things I heard in that. So for one, I will say, we can become very accustomed to smells rather quickly because it's already it's received as much as it absolutely needs. It's kind of like, you can eat food that tastes really yummy for the first, for a first while, then all of a sudden it's kind of like, I'm done with it. And the same thing can be said for the neurological system. All of our receptors are designed to take in so much. They can only take in, so much information, and then it becomes overwhelming, and now it becomes stressful to the system. So that's, I mean, I know we don't want to use the word stress, but we
Here we
can,
can.
yeah, but yeah, we can stress the system quite easily with too much. So there is a reason to say less is more. You don't need to use a lot when it comes to the neurological system. Give it just, a small amount. Pay attention to how it feels. And you're better off. I mean, that's the reason why microdosing and homeopathics and are so beneficial, because you give the body just enough information and then trust it to know what to do. That's the most important piece, and that's where spirit comes in when it comes to this kind of work. It's not just tuning into the wisdom, but it's trusting to know that it doesn't need us to control it. It doesn't need us to fix it. It's just we are in relationship with this body, and how can we give it the information just enough and trust it to do what it needs to do, and if we have to add more at some point, it will let us know. And this is where we follow the body's lead. So I think that would be the best way I know how to answer your question. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that makes a ton of sense.
Good. Okay.
Um, to yes, and so there are certain principles that, from an Ayurveda, less is more, too much is too much. Opposites, will decrease, um, each of the qualities. So yeah, the physical body itself saying, okay, I've had enough, and the senses saying, okay, I've had enough, is the communication of the body that we need to listen to.
I mean, how many times have we been listening? Yeah. How many times have we been listening to something and we just can't take the sound anymore?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
because there's been enough for the system.
So let's get into, do you do anything with allergies themselves, environmental allergies? Because that's the season that's coming up.
I do. I do a lot of work with helping to, again, soothe the immune system so that the allergic reactions are minimized. But again, also addressing any particular symptoms at the same time. That's how I work with it. It's like, okay, so if someone presents with a particular concern, we address the concern, but then it's selecting the best options when it comes to oils as far as what will help relieve those symptoms while also stabilizing the immune system so that the allergic reactions will naturally be relieved, if that make it. Yeah, that's how I would say it. And so that everything on that level is personalized. Nothing that I recommend has been on a shelf. It's not a general recommendation. I've spent the last 20 years really dissecting the chemistry of oils to understand how to make this recommendations to make it personal, because everybody's epigenome is as unique as our fingerprint. No two bodies are processing information in the same manner. So it's how do we honor what's going on in that system with the best oil selections that will also relieve symptoms.
which is very similar to Ayurvedic understanding, that every single person has their own unique balance of dosha, which
Mhm.
is body constitutions. And within those, you have your own qualities that are connected to those. So even within that, when two people have the same ratios or similar ratios, the underlying qualities are also different. And then it's also about environment and lifestyle and ancestry and season and time of day, time of year, and time of life. Are all of those things are factored in to what happens and whether or not the immune system is affected. So, and then therefore, we're also looking at micro channels within it.
Mhm.
So even though we're not talking about genomics, genetics, yeah, I mean, we are in a sense, but we're not.
Right.
Um, Simply because what my work is about is teaching people how to do it for themselves before they go get a test, which may or may not be timely, meaning, different times of the day will result, especially with the blood tests, will show up different things. And epigenetics are still relatively new. So things within the science world is constantly evolving. Not to
Oh,
say that
absolutely.
so not only is it constantly evolving, but they also backtrack a little bit on many, many different things. And so it's very fascinating to me to see how you would work with. Is there any subjectivity involved? Because in Ayurveda, because life is constantly changing, we have to be somewhat subjective and then come back to what's happening and change whatever
Right.
dietary thing that we offer, because the
100%.
body will learn.
My
So
thing
you
is,
work the same way.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the nature of nature is adaptation. That's all epigenetics is. It's not like we have defects or mutations or what they like to kindly call SNPs. The reason I even use the word epigenetics is because it's become very popular. People are becoming more and more familiar with it. But the truth is that it's constantly adapting. Like you said it's evolving. The body's always evolving. And, right now I'm teaching up here at the community college this very thing. And what my mission is to really teach people how to do this for themselves, how to begin to select oils for themselves, and then naturally adapt it as their body moves forward. Because the second you introduce a chemical to the system, you've already created change. Transformation is simply a shift in the energy. That's all transformation is. So you can transform what's happening in the body the second you put a drop on. People will get the reason why we get allergies or what we think are rashes on the skin from oils is theoretically, well, I shouldn't say theoretic. What it comes down to is that every essential oil has chemicals in it that create that increase tissue permeability, which means it just can come out through the skin. If your lymph system is stagnant, if it's not moving and you're not getting a full, what I like to look at is fully integrative, getting Ayurvedic work and other work that helps keep the systems moving. The first thing it's going to do is if you are releasing any sort of inflammation, it's going to come back out through the skin. immediately. And the reason for that is because the moment you introduce any kind of essential oil intentionally, it shifts the body into a rest and receive state. I don't call it rest and digest. I call it rest and receive. The moment you receive, the body is now being able to relax and it's going to start to release. So we have to pay attention to that. And like you said, it is very subjective because at this point now it's going to begin to adapt and you've got to learn how to follow the body's lead.
Exactly. Exactly. So I just wanted to add some Ayurvedic concepts
Please, yeah.
into this concept of why is it that the skin reacts so quickly to inflammation or to any sort of chemical. So where do I start? In Ayurveda, we see most chemicals, human-made chemicals, as sharp and penetrating. So what happens is it goes into the system very, very quickly. On the like really negative end, we call it a poison. But on a therapeutic end, we're looking for that sharp, quick acting. And when it goes sharp, quick acting into the system, it reaches the blood. And the blood, from an Ayurvedic perspective, is split into two portions. One which is uh, more of the lymphatic system, like it's white blood cells and the lymphatics. And then we have the red blood cells. So the white blood cells, that's where, and it doesn't really work that way. It's not white blood cells because that's a whole different space. That first layer of tissue, which is part of the blood, is has all the nutrients in it. It has all of the waste products in it. Then there's a second layer, which is rakta, which is the red blood cells, and that is connected to pitta, which is the fire element itself. And because the blood system is everywhere, it's very much underneath the skin in both the lymphatics as well as the blood itself. It's also in all of the mucosal membranes. Right. So that fire element, which is activated by that sharp thing, which is also fire, is going to create the inflammation. So this is how we see it. And that's why the skin will turn red first. And then if the body cannot remove the, the fire through any other means, it's going to go through the skin. And so the other means is always urination and or defecation. And the third one is the skin. So the skin is the thing that comes up first. That's how we see it. And it's also going to be held back to the sense of smell. It's also going to be held not only in your gut lining, but it's also going to be held in the sinus area as well. And so that also needs to be dealt with, because if you start reducing the inflammation in the gut, it's not necessarily going to help remove the inflammation and the other things that go along with it, because inflammation doesn't come on its own.
Right.
It's also going to help remove some of those other things. So back to that original, what we do for the sense of smell is, we also have to clear out the sinuses.
Yeah.
Which is one of the first things that, the current medical community dealt with whenever their sinuses. It's like, okay, red eyes and
Yeah, right.
sinuses and pain and headache, but that really isn't, that's a side effect. That's the body trying to remove some of these, what it considers toxins to the system. It's like, okay, we're going to put this in every single corner that we possibly can so it doesn't affect the functioning of our system. But when there's an overload, that's when we see the allergies.
Most definitely. And I wanted to say also, just before, because I've been wanting to say it and I keep forgetting, and that is the sense of smell is the only sense that's not filtered by the thalamus. It's the
Ah,
only one that we have that innervates the entire brain, which is another reason why overwhelming it can cause more brain fog and more confusion and potentially even trigger more allergies if we're overstimulating the sense of smell.
fascinating. So what's happening today with all the PCBs and all of these wonderful chemicals that we're putting on clothing and in
Mm,
our washing machine? So all of those things are in your triggering brain overload, immune overload
mhm,
as well,
right.
which is why every time uh, my neighbors do laundry, I can smell the thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot really that needs to be done in terms of subtracting things from our environment as well, not just adding to the system
Right.
with a smell, but we also have to subtract.
Right, because if you think about rest, I mean, we think about rest and receive, right? If we're overloading the system, then the body can't ever the nervous system can't ever rest. It's constantly taking things in, which will overwhelm the system. So by clearing our environment as much as we can of aromas gives our body a chance to relax. It gives the nervous system a chance to take a break from taking in a lot of information.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, does anyone in our audience have any questions? Can never tell what's going on because many people might be doing the dishes while or just listening in and using this as a podcast. Um,
Which I appreciate everyone being here. I really do. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. It's really a topic because we we don't honor the sense of smell. It's a forgotten thing until it gets overwhelmed with
Right.
a bad smell.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so important. So tell me more about whole brain, and it bypassing the thalamus.
Well, like I said, it's the only one that when the brain doesn't filter when it comes to the smells, it doesn't filter out anything. So it's getting to the visual cortex, the auditory. It's affecting the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the hypothalamus. I mean, that's the reason why our emotions can be so rapidly triggered by a smell. And that's the other thing about the sense of smell is to remember that it can, when we talk about triggers, and this comes back to the work that I do in recovery from trauma and addiction, um, that people are we can be easily triggered, and our nose is one way to do it. And something you had said in the beginning, which is that I mean, they use smell, they use aromas to prime environments, but it's not necessarily conducive to our best behavior depending on because our brains are picking it up immediately. So that's what makes it is a whole brain intervention that we have to be mindful of. It's very important to be mindful of it.
Exactly. It's I think one of the first times I was a youngin', in a yoga class where, a teacher came along with some lavender oil, and someone had a really negative reaction, and I went over to them and said, "Whoa, what's happening?" Lavender is supposed to be this universal aroma that it's healing if you put and calming, and it turned out that an abusive person used to have lavender around them all the time, and so they got triggered. So, it's like, I think that we have to understand the aromas, the scents that we put on to our systems, you know, not just from an allergen perspective, but it's like creating our own space. And when our space and our boundaries overwhelm somebody else's boundaries, it's not a good thing. It's like music in your car being blasted to everyone. It's not going to help everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because it does, that's where, for one thing, that's why because other people's bodies are picking up. They're detecting, even though, even if they can't smell it, again, I come back to that, but their bodies are always picking it up. So one of the recommendations I like to make, and is when we're talking about using oils, you can actually put them on your feet. If you wanna go out into public and you're concerned about how they would affect other people, and I don't mean on the soles of your feet. I know there's some schools of thought to put it on the bottom of your feet. I always like to recommend between the toes because the webbing is so thin and the capillaries are right there and you can absorb it right in. But that's one way to benefit from using them and not offend other people, with a lot of aroma.
Yeah. So you're reminding me of a science within Ayurveda where we use essential oils on specific points of the body. And this is called aromatherapy. And the feet and the hands, in certain areas, it's directed to
Mm,
specific um, subtle anatomy. Let me put it that way, and to the brain, because it's also affecting the nervous system and
sure.
shooting directly up there. But there's a huge point, um, be, right next to the inner part of the big toe, at the nail of the big toe. So it would be like the nail bed,
Oh,
and that
wow.
one is big, huge. And I don't remember which one it is, what the name of it is. But it will affect the body immediately. So what you're saying makes perfect sense. Yeah, the bottom of the feet, it's not going to go in as quickly or as deep. Because we've got calluses, and I mean, the feet are meant for certain things, and the nerve tissues end there. So it's always a good thing to put oils, or whether it's essential, or as I use food oils, sesame
Right.
oil, and whatnot, for the bottom of the feet, to simply relax the entire nervous system.
Mm.
And then if you wanted to add something to that oil, and in aromatherapy, it's a carrier oil.
Mhm.
We call them medicated oils. That's when you'll see it. But what you're doing is you're massaging it into the foot, which does a lot more than just putting it onto a single point. So there are many ways to work this, and there's no one single way to do it right. The thing is to simply do it, and if you're not using too much, you can experiment with most anything, you know
Absolutely.
you know
There's something you just said that was really important too. It's like there's no right way. And so I wanna say this about oils because sometimes, and I don't, I mean, I just want to say this because somebody might need to hear this, but we have a way of like, we hear there's so many recommendations on how to use oils and when to use oils. And I don't align with the prescriptive mindset, despite the fact that I come from pharmacology. Like I said, the body's constantly adapting. There may be times like if there's an oil that is recommended that's calming, but it might be stimulating to somebody else. So paying attention to that and realizing that your body is letting you know, and then adapting how you use it. Um, that's probably the most important piece. I mean, I've worked with people that have been living with autism or other disorders that couldn't sleep at night. And they would pick an oil or they would get oils that helped them to sleep at night and it would keep them wide awake. So we just flipped it, started using the oils in the morning, and it helped the body to naturally reset its clock gene, so to speak, so that it could actually relax and sleep at night. So adapting them is more important than following a particular protocol.
Oh my God, yes. You just reminded me of ashwagandha. Because ashwagandha is one of those herbs, and you could probably get ashwagandha oil these days as an essential oil, but it's one of those herbs that does exactly that. For some people, it's relaxing. For other people, it's heating and stimulating. So it's not a one stop shop for
Mhm.
all, and we each have our own communication relation. We need to listen to the body. We need to listen to whatever that stimulant is. And on this topic of so many recommendations from every single place in the world. I had a teacher, Dr. Ladd, who would teach us about any substance. And they said, if you just get in this, it doesn't matter whether it's a spice, an essential oil, an herb. And this was for practitioners. He said, just get to know 10.
Mhm.
And if you really communicate with these 10, then you'll be able to pretty much manage anything, because you're playing with them. It's like, and what we've done in current society is we've gotten so reductionist that everything has multiple minute forms of it. And it's simply not true. Even an essential oil is going to be different from one season to the next, its components, right? So we need to lift it up a little bit from there and get to know ourselves and what it communicates in general. And so what that also means is that just because it worked for me this year doesn't mean it's going to work next year.
Right.
And if it worked, when I was younger, it may not work now, or it may work. You don't know unless you try and you work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's I'm glad you said that because the nature of an oil changes. It'll change between seasons and the way our body uses it. And I'm now coming up with a series of books for this very reason, is to teach about how one particular oil can have so many different varieties, becoming more cognizant of that so that we can become more selective when we're purchasing, and then being aware of what our body is actually saying, how it benefits from it and whether or not it needs it any longer. And I love what Dr. Ladd said. I had a student the other day ask me, how many oils, I mean, should we really have around? Like, well, anywhere between 10 to 15 and work with those. And then just, use a handful at a time, maybe 3 or 4 at a time. Don't use them all and watch how your body moves. Watch how it flows with it. And then consistently, maybe even swap out one from time to time and just pay attention to how things feel because that's your best gauge.
Yes, exactly. We've been talking quite a bit about essential oils, and I just want to add a little caveat to it. So I don't use essential oils in my home. because I have cats, and cats' livers cannot handle the essential oils. So I just wanted to remind anyone who is reading, I mean, who's watching. This is going to go into a post, but I just wanted to remind everyone that look and see who's living with you, what animals are around you. And that might be an indicator again to rather than, um, it, you may not even want to touch the oils. And yes, put them on your feet under your socks so that your pets can stay safe.
Yeah, on that note, I don't recommend diffusing. That you said that because I know I've had somebody actually ask me once, "Can I diffuse oils to control the mood in the room of my guests?" And I went, "No, because you don't know what medications they're taking. Not all oils work with all medications, for one, and I think it's kind of, I don't feel it's appropriate to do that. Let people be where they
To
are."
change someone else's mood? Really? Yeah,
I don't agree with that, but I don't agree with diffusing either for the reasons that you just stated. Because you don't who else is in the home, whether they are a fur baby or a human, there's other people, there's other creatures around, and so having the respect and honoring in the individuality is really very important.
exactly. Because, you know, the sense of smell is so much closer to, because it's a little hidden, it's closer to our consciousness. You know, it is closer to our emotions. And that's because, as you stated earlier, it's closer to the mind itself. And so it's a bit hidden. And, you know, we're not always awake. We might be in the psychological current words are the states of consciousness are, you know, unconscious or subconscious. Um, from a tantric perspective, we're looking at you're either in a waking state, a dream state, or a non-dream state, sleep state, and beyond. And so the sense of smell will go permeate through all of those states. And you know, to control that in another person is mm, a violation.
Absolutely. And again, we don't have to smell anything. There could be things in the environment that because the sense of smell isn't just limited to the nose. It is, like I said, it is in the skin and it's all throughout the body. It's the largest group of receptors that we have of all receptors. And it is the closest one to consciousness because you don't have to smell something to connect with consciousness. The only reason it's called an aromatic compound is because of the shape of the molecule. Yeah, I'm getting a little scientific, but that's the reason why it's called aromatic, not because it has a scent. And so I just want to, expand upon the fact having that ability to smell aromas is so imperative. It's really very important. We were gifted this sense, and at the same time, remembering that our body is smelling something at all times, and that is again, I really want to reiterate what you just said. That is our closest connection to spirit. So thank you for that.
And thank you. And what a great place to end this conversation. We're just about out of time. And so, anything else you want to go, subscribe to Tammy's, um, subs
Unadulterated. I call it unadulterated.
unadulterated.
'Cause I'm all about not being adulterated and unadulterated is truth. It's about being real, and it's how can we be as real with ourselves as possible.
Great.
Mhm.
And one of these days, I'll be driving up 15, or if you're ever in Albuquerque, come on visit.
I will, we're not that far apart.
No, we're not. One of these days, we'll get a whole well, there was a Substack, um, can't be a reunion gathering. San Jose, I think about a year ago. We should probably
Really?
do it again. Yeah. Anyhow, maybe this is a project. Maybe it's not. I
Yeah.
don't know. Right now, I'm going to go out into the garden and smell all the smells that are coming in
Good. Good.
while having my lunch, which I'm going to be smelling too, as part of the calming down and centering. And that's really an important thing is to activate the sense of smell.
Good.
And it automatically calms you down. There's a reason why we say smell the roses.
That's
Stop.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so until next time, great having you here.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.